Conservation Education Director of the Katy Prairie Conservancy. Jaime is responsible for developing and implementing their activities and outreach program. His work also involves expanding collaborations with other organizations and agencies around conservation and education. He is also the point person for grassland restoration efforts on several Katy Prairie preserves and at over a dozen prairie builder schools and park locations throughout Greater Houston. Jaime has earned a bachelor's in biology and a master's in science education at the University of Houston. He serves as president of the Coastal Prairie Partnership and as a member of the Texas Children in Nature Coalition Steering Committee. He has won more awards for his work than can be mentioned here. We are honored to have Jaime speak to us tonight.
All right, well, thank you very much for having me here. And I'm going to make my bio like that because it's really it bores me, and I'm sure it bores you guys. So I am here today to, the title of my talk tonight is Double Trouble. I'm going to give you 2 ways to be active as citizens tonight. You're not going to get in trouble. But it's a way of getting your voice heard for a couple of important conservation activities that are upcoming. Nothing's been decided in either one of these 2 things, but voices are being heard about these 2 very important conservation subjects. One here in the middle of the city, in fact, right here in Memorial Park. One on the Katy Prairie. And what I will say from the beginning is that both of these are about what is the nature of the wild plant community going to be here in the park and also on the Katy Prairie and the wildlife that depend on those into the future. So these are 2, I think, important things. I'm going to pass this around. You can choose to make this into an airplane or football or whatever, but we're going to pass these around in case you have an interest in making your voice heard about Memorial Park. Lin Shen, who is somewhere, yes, she proves Heisenberg's law of like two things being, I can't keep track of her, but she put these together. She also put together a couple of sign-in sheets. If one of these issues touches you tonight and you want to stay involved in the process, you can put your name down on here. We'll send you some timely information, get you guys connected, okay? This is not about shaming anybody into doing anything. If you feel touched, then you can sign up on one of these things and get going. So I work for the Katy Prairie Conservancy. I get my paycheck from them twice a month and have been doing so for about 8 years. I get to dip my hand in education and also do some of the restoration work. That's okay. Restoration work on the Katy Prairie. So that's fun. I also helped to found this with my very good friend Flo Han in the back. Yay, Flo! Several years ago, the Coastal Prairie Partnership. This organization, which is having a good impact for prairies here locally, was founded after a heartbreaking loss, which was the Psalms Road Prairie. But from that, we got allergies apparently. No, I'm just kidding. From that, we've gotten a lot of good things rolling. So, in the last few years, prairies have just picked up pace like nobody's business because of a lot of the people in here and everybody doing such great work. Let me mention a couple things. So we've had a lot of success lately. This is probably the biggest success. I just got to see Terry Hershey this lunchtime hour today. I was seeing her at a gala. If you don't know who Terry Hershey is, she's an environmental legend here and gave $2 million to save this incredibly special place. Got to thank her again, and she was really interested in what's going on with the prairie. So we're meeting with a lot of success. We're raising the awareness of the prairie. We are doing really great stuff. But there's always more to do. So one thing I would invite you to do to learn more about prairies just in general is to maybe take advantage of a couple of things that we're working on. We have a Prairie Power Series. You can find this at prairiepartner.org at the Coastal Prairie Partnership. We're running a full slate of field trips, classes, workshops, photography, just all kinds of stuff. We're doing a Prairie Chicken Week. We're doing a whole Prairie Month because so many people are active, so many groups are active with prairies. So that's really great. We're also doing another State of the Prairie conference. This one's going to be done in Fort Worth for the first time. We're going to connect with our buddies up north. And we're going to have people come from all over the state of Texas and Oklahoma and some folks from Louisiana. And we're going to talk about some real pressing issues with the prairies in our southwestern region. But once a prairie is saved, is it always saved? Or any wild land? A lot of people have a notion that once you save a place, it's good, but we all know that that's not true. It needs guardians. Every wild place needs guardians. And this is very much the case for the Katy Prairie Conservancy, as well as Memorial Park. So one thing that we have done is we've created a new website called SaveOurPrairie.com. Now, if you remember that URL, we used that for Deer Park. That was saved. Now we're switching it over to help us with this effort. That's all Gulf Muley. That's on the Williams Prairie Preserve. And the question, the issue at hand is whether or not to build a road through the Katy Prairie Preserve. That is the pressing issue. So we have set up this website to connect people with the issue, to get them informed and get them active about this issue. So as just a quick reminder, a lot of you guys, how many of you guys know about the Katy Prairie? I'm not going to bore you with these minor details, but I will just remind you that we continue to add land to our holdings. We now conserve about 20,000 acres of land. There's more land that we're looking in the near term to preserve. It's big enough to put 2 of these memorial parks and Manhattan Island on, but we want 50,000 acres eventually. This road project will help to determine whether we can ever get there or not. So, 2 things about this road project. It's not certain it'll happen. It's not certain when it'll happen, if it does happen. But we know that if we don't add our voices to the chorus of people, including the Houston Chronicle, who said, do not do this, that has a better chance of happening. So let's go ahead and lead you through this real quick. This is our preserve system. As you can see, it is not all connected with lands that we own, but a lot of these lands, including this piece of land and this piece of land, are under conservation easement agreements, which means they cannot be developed. So in effect, we have this huge chunk of conserved property that's interconnected. And whenever you get those interconnections, you get streams running through a preserve system like that, and you have a variety of habitats, including farmland and ranchland, virgin prairie sites, and prairie wetland projects. You get a tremendous amount of biodiversity, including plant biodiversity. Our Warren Ranch, just this one piece of property right here, we've cataloged nearly 350 species of plants just on that one property. So I'm not going to tell you that this is all virgin prairie and there are buffalo out there and Indians hunting the buffalo. Not what I'm going to say. Much of the Katy Prairie has been transformed over time. But the system that has come in its place is a mosaic of different kinds of lands, including some native grasslands, and it's very rich biologically. So, like I said, our goal is to raise 50,000, or to protect 50,000 acres, because those folks who looked at this originally, the ecologists who looked at this, is this incredibly brave coalition of naturalists and hunters and other folks determined long ago that 50,000 acres, you could hold some of the integrity of the land together and some representation of what the original Katy Prairie was. That's why it's 50,000 acres. One goal that we have is to increase public access on certain parts of our preserves. We don't want to open up the whole thing, but we have 2 anchor points now. We have Warren Lake, and then we have the Indian Grass Preserve, which I'll show you a little bit later on. We want to, as much as possible and where it's appropriate, restore wetlands and grasslands. We have restored or transformed old rice fields. We've gotten about 2,500 acres of wetlands done in the last 15 years. 2,500 acres. Grassland habitat, we are working with a lot of our partners, including TNC, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and other partners to get native seeds to be more readily available so we can do some restoration work, some good restoration work. We offer a lot of educational programs for everybody. I teach everybody from pre-K to graduate students and everybody in between, and we offer a full slate of educational stuff. and to undertake research to help us better understand the Katy Prairie. We work with Texas A&M, Rice University, University of Houston, and Prairie View University. We work with all those guys. So far, like I said, we've conserved about 20,000 acres. Our goal is in just a few years, well, probably late 2014 and in 2015, to make the Katy Prairie open every day, just about, to the general public in 2 different locations. Warren Lake, which is a large 144-acre lake near 290 and Hager Road, is open every single day from dawn until dusk, or 7 a.m. till dusk. And if you haven't been up there, we have a 2-story platform, wildlife viewing platform. It's fabulous. I went up there the other day with a very noted crane expert and saw the bald eagle, pelicans, you name it. We saw it out there. It was fabulous. We will be working to open up our Indian Grass Preserve as a visitation site and man it just about every day of the week, so that if you want to get in your car, go out, see a prairie restoration, walk the grounds and all that, you'll be able to do that as well. In addition to that, we've created pocket prairies at schools and have helped to get folks who manage urban parkland to better understand prairies. We've helped collect seed for those projects where they've replanted prairies. So we have wonderful partners in the medical center doing the MD Anderson Prairie. We've been very helpful for Buffalo Valley Partnership and helping them determine their seed sources and collect seed for them. They're putting in about 11 acres of prairie over the next 3 years along Buffalo Bayou. It's going to be the biggest kind of reconstruction in the inner loop. And we just recently were named a globally important bird area. What does that mean? It sounds kind of impressive. What does that mean to be a globally important bird area?
It serves migratory species as well.
You got it. It is a gold standard. Basically means that we are critical to the survival of bird species in this area. Flo, do you know how many global important bird areas there are in this area? No. Well, it's not more than 5, probably. I'm talking about this general greater Houston area. I'm not sure. I think Bolivar, Flats. You don't come by these very often. And that's because we have over 300 species of birds that have been cataloged on the prairie, and we're always finding new kind of accidental species. We're one of the last strongholds in our area for quail. We have very strong crane populations. I just saw this winter, saw a flock of 400 on one piece of property. Waterfowl, you name it. All these guys are coming to us because we have the right kind of habitat, got a mixture of habitat. We get some really rare birds on these pieces of property, and also mighty predators. We have just about every hawk species and predatory bird that you can see. In fact, one of the most fun things to do is to see a peregrine hunting ducks in the middle of the winter time. That is great. And we also have this guy. This is actually my favorite prairie animal. When I was a kid, I lived by a prairie remnant up in Aldine, where it's in the Greens Point area. And we lived right next to a prairie remnant. We used to call them fields. And my dad actually caught one of these in a live trap one time. It's like 4 years old. This thing was wild. It was banging itself against the cage. It had these bloodshot eyes, and it looked crazy. And I had never seen anything like that before. And I just wanted to know everything I could about this animal. And it's really the thing ultimately that spurred me to become a wildlife biologist is I wanted to know more about that animal. Well, this animal is one of the species of prairie animals that has very quickly diminished in our area. We used to see them all over the place. You talk to the old timers, and they were everywhere on the Katy Prairie, but we see a few of them here and there. Well, this is just one of the animals that's blinking out due to lack of habitat or habitat change. So to see them out there on the open prairie, along with some other things like meadowlark and quail and other things that have declined, tells me we got to be the guardians of this place. We got to save this place because it is one of the last refuges. Like I said, we're just been designated an important bird area, but the Katy Prairie does a lot of different things, right? So you guys who know or have protected the Katy Prairie or went to the Katy Prairie conference in the early 90s know that it does lots of things besides just wildlife habitat and plant habitat. excellent at reducing flooding, right? I call it Houston's shield. We absorb millions of gallons of water before they get into the streams that ultimately go through the city and go to Barker and Addicts Reservoir. We are soaking up, free of charge, millions and millions of gallons of water for the city. Recreation, there's all sorts of recreation that goes on there. We have a full slate of classes, but there are a lot of also traditional uses, hunting, there's cycling, there's all sorts of things going on. And lastly, agriculture. Some of our pieces of property are farmed. We have rice production, we have some corn production, and we also have cattle production. And we've had that cattle production since the 1870s on one of our properties on Warren Ranch. It's one of the last places to see big open range and cattle ranches like there were all over Harris County. In fact, on March 29th, we're going to have something called Ranch Roundup. And we're going to invite the general public to come out, see real cowboys, many of whom are generational cowboys. Their daddies and their granddaddies and their great-granddaddies were cowboys on the prairie. And they're going to be operating the cattle out in space. It's fascinating how they do this. We get to eat barbecue and try our hand at roping and do a fake branding and all that stuff. Well, as wonderful as this place is, there is a plan for this place. And this plan is not a definite plan, but it is a rendering of a plan that very much there is a coalition called the 36A Coalition would like to see done. So if you take a look at this first picture here, this is the entire route going through 3 counties, Brazoria, Fort Bend, and Waller. In these 2 counties, it pretty much follows Highway 36, an already built highway. The goal is to ultimately connect the Port of Freeport to Waco for commerce and as a military movement route. But in Waller County, it would create all that new dotted road. And that dotted road just happens to go through our preserve system, right there. How many of you guys have driven Highway 99, the new segment of Highway 99? What have you seen along that route?
Dead animals.
Dead animals, what else?
Housing developments.
Housing developments. And sign after sign after sign that says, for sale. We knew that when 99 got built, that there would be a sprawl coming. We did not, as the Katy Prairie Conservancy, fight that road. It was away from us. We knew that we'd have effects, but we're not a litigious organization. We're not an organization that is very confrontational, and sometimes we pay the price for that. But when we see this line on this road, and it goes right through us, and we know all the sprawl that will happen, we have no choice but to act. And what I mean by that is we have to be highly engaged in the process with the folks whose vision is this, and try to work with them for a better solution for the prairie. So our goal is to get them to not do this, and not even do this, but try to figure out a way, if they're going to do this road, to be far enough away from us so that there's not a very quick degradation of the habitat quality that we've worked so hard to protect. As you guys know, if you're familiar with highways, there are a lot of primary impacts. So there's obviously roadkill. That's the most common thing that you see out there. But there's light pollution, there's noise pollution. I just read an article by someone who talked about how the fumes from cars and trucks actually disorient pollinators, they can't even find things. So there's all these primary impacts from the road. What we're most concerned about, though, is all the secondary impacts from all the sprawl that will happen directly on our edge. And if you think about Highway 99 being over here, and this road being here, where are we going to expand to? How are we going to protect land if we can't move over here? And I will tell you that there's some prairie in here that is in miraculous shape. Beautiful shape. So, here's our preserve system. Here's a close-up of where it's going to go. That headquarters is where our visitor center will be. And so this is not going to be but a hop, skip, and a jump from our restoration project here, but we'll cut directly across some of the best waterfowl land that I know of on the Katy Prairie. When I do Christmas bird counts every January 1st, I sometimes go on this property right here. We have a whole set of prairie potholes on that property. I've seen 6,000 green-winged teal on one pond. And I've seen just literally thousands of birds on that property. Birds and roads don't do really well together. So we are the guardians of the Katy Prairie. Many of you guys have helped the Katy Prairie massively in the past by your actions, by your letters, by your pictures. Just to single somebody out, Brand has just been an incredible champion for the Katy Prairie over the years. And this is something that hopefully we'll be able to use to galvanize people to action and to reintroduce ourselves to a whole new generation of people to say, look, what we're trying to do is not just protect a bunch of cows out here. We're trying to make an anchor park for that part of the city. A huge area that will remain wild, that will be home to a lot of different things, where you can go out and under the prairie sky, you can go see stars and you can connect with your culture and your history and our story as a people. We don't need this road to there. We don't. So I'll show you this. So the road, this the road will go right through there. And these are all those prairie potholes. This is kind of a rendering of one of the things that we want to do in terms of visitor improvements. We want to have some trails. We want to have some visitation sites. And one of the visitation sites is our Indian Grass Preserve Visitor Center. What we're going to start doing later this year is actually restoring a 155-acre tract back to some of its original hydrology. We've already done the test plots to find out where the potholes were on this property that were filled in long ago, and we're going to start excavating those out, reinstituting some of the pimple mounds, replanting them with tall grasses. This is going to be a really wonderful place, and we'll have a visitor center on that as well. This is a picture taken by the Houston Chronicle of the property that would be affected. You guys know that that is a Northern Harrier, right?
Marshall.
Maybe a week ago, we had a couple of birders out there, and they spent 2 hours on that property. They counted 46 harriers working this property over 2 hours. It's a very specialized bird. It likes open areas, and it hunts out there, and it comes in the wintertime. And they need big open spaces. This is not a bird that's going to rent an apartment next to you somewhere. They need big open areas. And these big open areas provide habitat for many things. Even though this is not a virgin prairie site, it holds a lot of biological wealth. So much so that over the next probably 2 months, we're going to do a very intensive biological survey of the properties that will be directly affected. And we're looking for some rare stuff. So one thing that we're going to do, we're going to be looking for this dude. Now this is my territory. So
Crawfish.
this is called the crawfish frog. This is a species that is imperiled. You don't find it everywhere. It's declined very quickly. It likes crawfish burrows, and we're going to be working with Texas A&M, Dr. Toby Hibbets, put out some frog monitoring equipment, frog loggers, and putting them out to listen for this species that's going to be breeding here pretty quickly. Along with this species, I have heard another species of frog on this property and didn't record it. So I'm going to have to come back and record it officially, that has never been scientifically proven to be in that county. We don't really know everything that is on this property is the key. We know that we've seen eagles there. We've seen sandhill cranes. We've seen river otter crossing across the prairie there. We've seen a lot of stuff, but we don't know everything that's there, so we need to learn its secrets. This species may be on this property. This is Texas prairie dome. This is an endangered species, and if we find this species, I'm going to be a very happy boy. Because this is an endangered species and will certainly have an effect on whether or not that road happens or not. So one thing that we will do for those folks who are signing up today to keep in contact, every once in a while we'll send out a notice and say, hey, we're going to go take a look at this property. You want to go and check it out with us? You want to go and listen for the birds and the frogs and see this thing? We're thinking about maybe doing a star party later in the spring so people can see what you can see right now without a roadway. You know, I've seen this played out before. I've seen this, we've all seen the same game where you have a really nice habitat and you get a road through it. I worked here for 7 years. In fact, my wedding reception was in this room. And when they elevated that highway, a lot of this habitat was effectively destroyed. Can't get it back. So loud that I've tried to do sound recordings in the Arboretum to get back to the Arboretum, and I cannot cancel out the road noise. Well, that's an effective destruction of the habitat, because for animals that rely on sound, that is killer. And I can tell you from personal experience leading owl prowls here for almost 20 years, the number of owls in here dropped when that highway came through. This is the same thing that will happen here. This is a place where we've recorded at least 5 species of owls, the Katy Prairie. One being the short-eared owl, which is not real common. Yeah, barn owl, very common, where we are anyway, although species in decline. Great horn, screech, short-eared, and occasionally barred along the creeks, and occasionally burrowing owl. All right, yeah, 6 owls. So potential effects, obviously you got all these negative things, noise pollution, light pollution, water pollution, air pollution, fragmentation, direct loss of habitat, and loss of agricultural fields, and it'll also affect how we manage the place. On Monday, I think we're gonna have a prescribed burn on one of our properties. Not next to this property, but it's a great property. In fact, I hold out great hope that we'll be able to release maybe an experimental population of horned lizard on the property we're going to burn on Monday, because it's got great harvester ant population on it, massive. That road goes through there. We'll never be able to burn that property, ever, because you can't have burns right next to roads. So it's going to really fundamentally change the way we're actually able to manage and use that land, which is a taking of that land. So, what do we want? And how do you guys get involved, if you want to? First of all, we're going to be as neighborly as we can. We're a private landowner, and we like being good neighbors. So we're going to try to work with the folks who are determined to get this road done to see if we can't work jointly on a feasibility study for this road that looks at alternate routes or even the option of not building it at all. We will not support any plan or join a study that already has a fixed route that cuts through our property. Can't do that. And we want that study, if it does occur, it's not a done deal that it will occur, but we're trying to work out differences right now. We want them to take a look at all the potential impacts, not just the economic, but the ecological as well. So, steps you can take if you want to get involved. Number one is HGAC. Is a planning agency. How many of you guys know what HGAC does or is? Some of you guys don't, but it's a very powerful thing. Okay? It's a coalition of municipalities and decision makers. And they have a mobility transportation policy council that helps to determine what road projects are going to happen in our region. This road is not on their mobility plan as of yet. If it gets on their mobility plan, it'll be very hard to stop that steam train. So you can contact Alan Clark at HGAC and say, don't put a road through the Katy Prairie. We don't have enough green space. Our environmental reputation is not the most sterling in the country. We don't need to damage it further by going through one of the only globally important bird areas in our region. One thing that will be very critical and important is next Friday, on February 28th, you can attend an HGAC meeting. The HGAC office is real close to Richmond and Timmins, over there in the Greenway Plaza area. If you get there at 9:10, you have to get there at 9:10, you can actually sign up to speak for up to 3 minutes on Katy Prairie Conservancy's behalf and the Katy Prairie. And we hope that we'll have a lot of supporters come out and say, don't do this. There's a better way of doing this, or not, don't do it at all, because we cannot afford to lose the Katy Prairie and all the hard work that has gone into saving it. You can write the supporters of the highway to tell them not to do it as well. On the website, saveourprairie.com, we have an icon that says take action. And it gives you 4 concrete steps that you can take, one of which is joining a newsletter so that you can keep up to date on what's going on. I will tell you honestly, as of right now, we get a briefing every morning like a political campaign. We are not we're not oppositional to anything right now because the feasibility study is not determined if it's going to happen and everything. The only and best thing we can do right now is to tell the decision makers, don't put a road to the Katy Prairie. And there are 4 action steps that you can do on that Save Our Prairie thing and get other people to connect to it as well. All right. Now, the sign-up sheet for that is going to be right here. I'm going to give it to Lan. She'll have it in the back. There's another sign-up sheet on here for the next thing I'm going to talk about real quick. But before yeah.
Would you just go over who is behind the highway?
Who is behind this highway? There is a coalition of municipalities, engineers, and business people behind the highway.
It's the same group that does the San Houston hallway and other.
No, this is a
Port of Freeport.
right. Port of Freeport is a very important player.
Port of Freeport?
Yeah, the counties, all 3 of the counties that Jaime mentioned are supporting it.
Right.
A number of the towns
Along the route.
along the route are supporting it. And like Jaime said, a lot of the big engineering firms, because they're going to make money off of it,
Right.
are supporting it.
Right.
Well, what's in the Waco area that benefits from
Well, one thing is there's a Chiquita banana distribution plant. Yes. So they ship up green bananas and they ship them out to the distribution center. What's that?
Mars Candy.
Mars Candy. So what we're not saying is you should never build a road ever again. We're not saying we hate Chiquita banana, nothing like that. We just think that if the road needs to be built, first of all, there's a more geographically straight route to do that. It's not exactly the straightest route to go to Waco. But if you have to build it far enough away from us so that it's not impacting what we get to do in the future and our wildlife. Yes, sir.
You mentioned teal. Have you contacted us
I think what you're going to find is that if this does get more contentious, and I hope it doesn't, I hope we have a good resolution to this for all parties concerned. If it gets more contentious, we are going to have a lot of environmental groups lining up right behind us to fight this, because they recognize the value of the Katy Prairie. But more so, it's also out of self-interest in that they know if they can go through us, they can go through anybody. So we already have had a lot of environmental groups reach out to us and say, how can we help you? How can we publicize this? How can we get active? And how can we protect each other? We are our brother's keeper in a lot of ways, and they've been very generous in coming forward. And we've said, just hold on for 1 second, let us see where this is, and then we'll call you in if we need you. Yes, sir.
Is it possible to suggest that the road go either west of the proposal or east of the proposal and avoid the problems that you've just mentioned?
Yeah. Well, it can't go too far east because the Grand Parkway is there.
Okay, so
it would be
west.
duplicative. It would go west. We have a little bit of trouble saying you need to put the road here, because then we're going to be telling them to put it through somebody else's property. We'd rather let them kind of handle that. We're not road engineers. We're wildlife guardians. So we don't want them going through us, but we can't tell them where to put the road. So what we're saying is the feasibility study, though, can't be a rubber stamp. It can't say we're gonna study this, and then they have one route through the Katy Prairie. We're not gonna buy that. It's gonna have to include multiple routes, including not building it at all, and none of the routes, if we're gonna be a part of the study, can be straight through us. We just won't, we don't want to, early on, this coalition was, talking about this being a low impact highway and environmentally friendly. Green, and they said, we're working with the Katy Prairie Conservancy. We had never been contacted about this before. So, I think that they thought that, in fact, one of the people involved in this road project said, we're basically putting it here because it's the path of least resistance. Now, they didn't know that my boss and my board chair are not the path of least resistance. They're two of the toughest, smartest ladies I know, and they will not let this happen without a fight if it comes down to that. We hope it doesn't come down to that.
So, Jaime,
Yes.
I'm confused that this is a semi-private entity that feels like they can legally condemn property for their use?
No,
Well, you may say that.
I mean, I know that public
At-
groups.
At this point in time, the actual entity that would construct the road is not known.
Right.
Could be the Texas Department of Transportation, could be a private entity, could be several counties together.
Mhm.
It's not known at this time, but any public entity does have condemnation authority.
Mhm.
And in some cases, private entities, for instance, pipelines, have also been given condemnation authority.
Yep.
So if they're gonna put it anywhere and someone doesn't want it, they're gonna have condemnation authority.
Yeah, and in fact, we have pipelines crossing our preserves, which we have no right to stop. We have to allow them access. We've had several pipes go in the last several years, so that's absolutely right. Do you have a question back there?
Yeah, what is the place, or who do we contact to encourage them to do the study the way y'all have the study done?
Alan Clark at
Alan Clark.
HGAC. But if you go to saveourprairie.com and hit that take action,
Uh,
all 4 steps are very clearly delineated. And contacting Alan Clark at HGAC is one of those options.
And he's the one that you would contact about the study, saying,
Yes.
please make the study so that it can.
You got it. You got it.
All right.
Is it saveourprairie.org or not?
.com. Yes, ma'am.
Why is it called 36A? Is there already a Highway 36?
Yes. And in the road portions in Brazoria and Fort Bend counties, they'll be pretty much following the existing Highway 36. 36 then goes on to go through Sealy and Belleville. Is that right?
Yeah.
So they could use that, but from what we're hearing, those communities don't want it to go through them. Yeah. And there's Houston toad habitat. There are complications, and I'm sure that the person sitting right next to you could tell you all about this, but they find that if you think about it in terms of future development rights and everything, I mean, this is just right. It's just open farmland right now. They say that it's not about development, but come on. You know.
You know what you ought to call this thing? You ought to call this the reincarnation of the Trans-Texas Corridor.
It is the reincarnation of the Trans-Texas Corridor, but instead, you always name things after the thing you destroy. So they call this the Prairie Parkway. Okay? Yes, and this is what they want to call it because it sounds very friendly. Much like a development just to the north of one of our properties is called Mallard's Crossing. And very few mallards want to cross there, trust me. All right, before you switch gears, if you are interested in this, we'd love to have you guys sign up that sheet. It'll give you up to the minute. It's kind of an exciting thing. It's ongoing. Land's got it right there. I'm going to tell you real quickly about this, and this is another thing that you can sign up to learn more about. And this is kind of more, got more impact for us right here who love and use Memorial Park. So the Memorial Park Conservancy, let me go back one, is a group that has somewhat of an authority to advocate and create plans for the park in conjunction with the City of Houston and a bunch of other partners. Lots of push and pull there. But they're going through the master planning process, much like the Houston Arboretum went through the master planning process several years ago, or last year. And so I'm sitting on the Ecotech panel with Brant and some other folks. So we're trying to figure out, what do you do when that happens? You know, this massive die-off in the park. And the Arboretum really wrestled with this as well. How are you going to plan for ecological resiliency, seeing that we're probably going to have projections for more drought? So what they've done is they have asked people to comment on what they would like, how they use the park currently, where they're from, and what they would like to see in the planning process for the park. Now, you guys are native plant people, wildlife people. There are a lot of pushes and pulls on this park and on the Memorial Park Conservancy, a lot of stakeholders. You got the runners, you got the mountain bikers, you got the golf course folks, you have the athletic field folks. You have lots of people with ideas for this piece of property and how it should work. People always have lots of ideas. So some of the topics that we've come up with in terms of concerns we have for the future planning of this park, and there is money to do this project, unlike the road right now that doesn't have money to do this project, there is money for this project. And they're planning what's going to become of Memorial Park over the next several decades. So we've talked about things like future management of existing prairie sites like the one on the railroad track. Issues of fragmentation. How many trails should there be? How much of this land should be set aside for nature in and of itself? What is this park going to look like? Are you going to reforest the whole thing where the trees died? Are you going to create grasslands? Are you going to augment wetlands? Park lighting and its effects on wildlife. What should that look like? What is a good nature people balance? Do we even have one? Was it lost a long time ago? Are we looking to turn that back? And what kinds of trail systems are we going to have? So these are all issues that are going to affect this park for many decades to come. Some folks in this room have written really detailed, really good letters about what they'd like to see, their concerns. And it's been, I think, very helpful for the Memorial Park Conservancy to get those letters to see that people are concerned that there is a big nature community here, not just joggers and not just golf enthusiasts, but there's a lot of people who are advocating for a wilder park, a greener park, restored park, a healthier park. So what they've done is they've created a website, which is on that little slip that I just passed out to you. And what they're doing is they're taking public commentary right now. And this public commentary is going to very much become grist for the master planning process. So what we want you to make sure, let me go ahead and get this right here. Sorry, not my projector. Let's see. You just never know how projectors are going to work. Okay, they created this website. So if you go to the Memorial Park website, there's a link to this, but you can go straight to this website with these little slips of paper that Lan has, and you can comment on how you use the park, how you'd like to see the park be used. Tell us your ideas for Memorial Park. This area right here will let you comment. So if you want more park space reserved for wildlife, for nature, if you want limits on trails or more trails, this is your chance to have a voice in the master planning process outside of the Ecotech Committee and the other committees, the Cultural Committee and all these other committees that are working. This is the general public's way of saying, this is what we'd like to see. We should aspire to this. We should aspire to this. So if you'd like to visit this website and make comments, it's amazing how few people it takes to be heard over the din of noise. So Lan does have these slips right here. I'm not going to say too much more about this, except that it is important. This is one of our anchor parks. It's a place where people oftentimes come to commune with nature, and we feel like it's one of those sentimental places that we all should care about and love and nurture. And my hope is they're thoughtful about this process, whatever you think that the park should be. All right, do you guys have any questions? I've been talking for about an hour or so. I don't want to put you guys to sleep. Yes?
I just have a comment. We were sort of asked or told or something that if you would like more nature and protection of the nature or native plants, to please comment, because there have other organizations are more organized. For example, maybe the people that want more bike trails, or people that want more rugby fields or more softball fields. And if they are more organized and they have more comments that they want it for those purposes, that when it comes to, they go to city council, they might not, it's hard for them to say, we want more nature, when most of the comments say, we want more this and that and the other. So
Right.
it's important that if you do want more nature or more native plants or that kind of stuff, to write in and comment.
That's right. You guys are the Loraxes. These trees are not going to speak for themselves, or these grasslands, or whatever you want in here, they're not going to talk for themselves. And the trail runners, for the most part, are not going to advocate for all the green stuff you want to see. They're going to advocate for jogging, and the other interests are going to really squeaky wheel it to get soccer fields and all kinds of stuff in the park. So if you care about this place, this is your chance. There's going to be an end to this comment period. And once that's gone, they're going to start wrapping it up and coalescing this stuff, and it's going to be what it is for the next few decades.
I think it's going to end like in 20 days or something.
Yeah.
And when you go to the website, it says
You
how
got
many
it.
days.
This is your chance to get heard. All right, anybody else have questions? Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, I know that there are ruins for the old Camp Logan over there near the railroad prairie. And the people that are archaeologists, they're trying to say some remnant of those ruins.
Yes.
You know, and I think the whole concept of preservation wasn't in the list that you had back there, but that's another element that they would be the kind of people that would be in favor of keeping the prairie. And they just want a very simple sign and like a few ruins left. They don't want to build anything.
Yeah, I mean, there are some good number of cultural resources, not just Camp Logan. There are actually some other older cultural resources in this park, none of which is interpreted at this point. You would never know it. You know what happened here. Very fascinating history of this place. So yes, that's a good point. Yes, ma'am.
Did they really talk about putting, I guess it's wildlife corridors, or you know, where they put a bridge over the road that the wildlife could go back? Has there been any talk about doing more of those across the?
I don't know. Have you heard anything about that, Brant? I think that was mostly done for people. When I worked here, the only way to get across that was to walk across the railroad track, like Stand By Me, and it was pretty scary.
Right. But it would be neat if they had some for nature to go across, and then make those maybe little prairie.
Yeah, those little.
I hear them being done in other countries, but I don't know. If
Yeah, they're doing them up in Canada for bears and all sorts of things. Yeah. So, any other questions? You know what? I'm always around. You can reach me by email. If you have any questions, we'll try to steer you in the right direction, and I'll take your question. Yes.
I just wanted to know your favorite animal. Was that a jackrabbit?
Jackrabbit.
Jackrabbit.
Oh, I didn't say the name. Black-tailed jackrabbit.
Are they a hare?
They are a hare. Yep, they are a hare. The hairs differ a little bit in the teeth, the dentition, and also in their lifestyle. They're born
Furred and their eyes are open.
Yeah, their eyes are open. They nest on the ground. They're real kind of strange animals. Real neat. Super fast, and survivors of the Ice Age.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, most